Today, we're going to talk about one of the most important business books for anyone who's ever worked in tech, The Phoenix Project. Now, it's actually written like a novel, but the story it tells, this story of complete chaos, of crisis, and then transformation, it's a reality for so many companies. This quote, man, it just nails the vibe inside the IT department of a company we're going to get to know called Parts Unlimited. It was cynical, it was full of finger-pointing, and honestly, the culture was just broken. You had development, operations, and security, and they were basically at war with each other. But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about all the problems. It's a story about a solution. It's the blueprint for how a company that was right on the brink of disaster managed to completely turn things around. Now, to really get why the solution is so brilliant, you first have to understand just how bad things were. I mean, Parts Unlimited wasn't just struggling a little bit. It was failing, and it was failing fast. Yeah, that number, that was their stock price, down 19% in just the last 30 days. Wall Street had totally lost confidence, investors were screaming, people were demanding heads roll. The pressure was just immense. And while Parts Unlimited was busy imploding, their competition was absolutely flying. They were agile, they were innovative, they were gobbling up market share. Meanwhile, Parts Unlimited was just stuck, mired in delays, drowning in dysfunction. Every department pointed the finger at IT, and IT just blamed everyone else. At the dead center of this hurricane was one single project. It was called Project Phoenix, and it was supposed to be the company's big savior. You know, the one thing that would integrate everything and make them profitable again. Instead, it became the anchor that was dragging the whole company to the bottom of the ocean. And the launch was an absolute catastrophe. And we're not talking about a few small bugs here. The system was losing orders, it was double charging people, and worst of all, it exposed sensitive credit card information, which led to a massive data breach. The company wasn't just losing money anymore, it was actively destroying any trust its customers had left. So, right in the middle of this 5-alarm fire, something totally unexpected happens. A new perspective shows up that forces everybody to look at their work in a completely radically different way. So, meet Bill Palmer. He's our hero, and he gets this promotion he never wanted to run IT operations, right as Project Phoenix is exploding. He's completely overwhelmed until he meets this kind of mysterious, really eccentric board advisor named Erik. Now, Erik doesn't talk about servers or code. He talks about old-school manufacturing. And he hits Bill with this one profound idea from something called the theory of constraints. You have to focus all of your energy on the single biggest constraint, the bottleneck in your system. He says improving anything else is just a waste of time. It's an illusion. And that's the million-dollar question, right? In a factory, a bottleneck is easy to spot. It's a machine that can't keep up. But what does a bottleneck look like in the invisible world of IT work? The answer is pretty shocking. The biggest thing holding back this entire multi-billion-dollar company wasn't a server or a piece of software. It was one single, brilliant, and totally overwhelmed engineer. His name was Brent. So why was Brent the bottleneck? Well, he was the only guy who really understood all the old, complex systems. He was the only one who could fix the worst outages. Every single important project, every major fire, it all needed him. He was completely buried, all the time, which meant all that important work just ground to a halt, waiting for him. To figure out how to manage the flow of work to Brent, Erik gives Bill another tool. He tells him, you have to stop seeing IT work as just one big, messy blob. You have to start categorizing it. He breaks it down into 4 distinct types. And when they actually do this, the results are, wow, it's a huge eye-opener. A staggering 40% of all their time was being eaten up by what they called unplanned work. You know, emergencies, fixing defects, cleaning up messes from old projects. This hidden factory of just fighting fires was starving all the important projects of the time and people they desperately needed. Okay, so now they can finally see the problem. They understand the bottleneck is Brent, and they can see how unplanned work is killing them. Armed with this new knowledge, Bill and his team start to put a new philosophy into practice, something Erik calls the 3 ways. So the first way is all about speed and looking at the whole system. The goal isn't to make one person faster, it's to make the entire process faster.
Work should move like it's on a smooth, one-way assembly line, from an idea in someone's head all the way to a happy customer, without getting stuck or, worse, being sent backward.
So how did they actually do it? Well, three key things. First, they took all that invisible work and put it up on a giant board for everyone to see. Second, they stopped starting new things until old things were finished. They limited their work in progress. And third, and this one is crucial, they stopped letting just anyone dump work on Brent. All work had to go through a proper, controlled process to protect his time for what mattered most.
The second way is all about communication and quality. Think about it. Instead of finding a huge problem at the very end, like with the Phoenix launch, they built systems to get feedback immediately. This means developers find out right away if their code breaks something. They can fix problems when they're small and cheap to fix, long before they can ever cause damage to a customer. And the third way, well, this is really the cultural glue that holds it all together. It's about moving away from a culture of blame and creating a culture of learning. It means you treat failures not as something to be punished, but as opportunities to get better. You encourage people to try new things, and you understand that you only get really good at something by doing it over and over and over again.
So after putting in all this work to implement the three ways, did it actually help? Oh yeah, it wasn't just a small improvement. It was a complete top-to-bottom transformation of the entire business. This table really says it all. The old way, the Project Phoenix way, meant they were deploying code maybe once every few months. It took ages, it ended in total disaster, and the culture was just fear and blame. The new way, which they used on a follow-up project called Unicorn, allowed them to deploy changes multiple times per day. Leads went from months to minutes. The result? Record-breaking revenue and a culture of trust. And here's the biggest takeaway from the whole story. They didn't get a bigger budget. They didn't hire 100 new engineers. They fundamentally changed how they worked. By focusing on flow, on feedback, and on learning, they didn't just save the company. They became a leader in their market. Now, the principles in this story, they aren't just fiction. The three ways are the very foundation of the whole DevOps movement that's transformed how tech companies work today. Which kind of leaves us with a question for you. How can you start creating a faster, smoother flow of work for your own team? What's your first way?